lab, we're going to create your first navigation menu, and we're going to start using some of those hover effects we looked at. So, first step is to create a new HTML file in Visual Studio Code. So for this lab, we're just going to be working in an HTML file, and we're going to use embedded styles. So create a new file, make sure you save it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Don't remember what this lab's called. lab10.html. Alright, so now this should be ready to go. Then let's go ahead and add in all our essential code. So starting with opening and closing HTML tags. Opening and closing head tags. Opening and closing title tags with title in between them, and then opening and closing body tags. Alright, next we want to go ahead and add the following code to our head, and that's those style tags that we're going to add in there. So style type equals text/CSS, and then we have our closing style tag. And remember, all of our CSS styles can go in between these tags for that embedded code. So now let's work in the HTML first. So our goal is to make a navigation menu something like this, okay? So first, I'm going to go ahead and just start by adding a div in my body. And then I am going to create an unordered list. So remember to do that. Opening and closing unordered list tags. And then some list items. And I want you to make 5 different list items. So the quickest way to do this would just be to make your opening and closing list item tags. And then make your caption in between them. Doesn't really matter what you name them, but you can do that, and then I'm just going to copy them so that we have 5 of them. You can write them all out if you want, but you've seen me write them out, so I don't really necessarily need to do that. Okay, so then we want to make them each into links, and again, these links don't actually need to go anywhere for this lab. We just need to make an empty file path so that they act as links. So inside of these list items, I'm going to go ahead and add some opening and closing A tags. And again, if you want to do it, again, if you just want to do this. So we got to add that href in there, but then you want to just copy that 5 times instead of adding href in 5 times. You can do that. So as long as we have 5 list items. So should be a list item with opening and closing A tags in there. Item 1, or whatever you call it, should be in between those A tags, and then you should have that href equals, and then an empty file path here inside your A tag. And then do that for all 5 items. Alright, and then finally, let's add a heading to the top of our list using an h1. So that's going to probably be like our little caption like this. So, and I want this to be inside my div, but not inside my list. Okay? So I'm just going to do it inside my div, but above my list here. I'm going to do h1. I'm just going to name it something like menu. Alright. So let's save that and see what it looks like. Alright, this is what it should look like for now. So we have the structure in place. Now let's just style it. Okay? So let's see. Let's go to our CSS, and that's just at the top of our page here. Remember, inside the style brackets. And let's make sure all of our elements are block elements first. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a class for my div. Class equals, and I'm just going to name it menu. And then up here, I'm going to say dot menu, and then display block to make everything within that div block. And we're not really going to see much of a change here, but that will help everything work. Then we want to turn off all of the bullet points and underlines. So we have a lot of bullet points here. So let's target our unordered list. And let's say list style, actually I think it's list style type, none. That'll turn off all our bullets. And then we want to turn off the underlines. So that is actually the A, or the link that we want to target. So up here, again, we're going to say A. And then here we're going to say text, decoration, none. Alright, great. Alright, so then next I want you to change the font and experiment with the margins and padding for each of your buttons. So maybe just change the font for everything in our menu. So font family, just gonna change mine to Verdana. Alright. Let's say I want my font size for my list items, or my everything in my list. I want the font size to be bigger for that. So font size, let's just do 20 pixels, see what that looks like. Great. Now the reason we don't want to do it specifically on the A is because we have A's and list items tied together. So we'd have to do it on both, and so it would just be cleaner if we just change the font size of everything within that unordered list. So all of our little items here. Let's see. We also want some margins and padding. So actually, I want to make these look a little bit more like buttons. And this is going to be my next stage, but I'm going to do this before I make my margins and padding. So all buttons should have a border and background color. So all of your list items, I want to have a border and background color. So each list item, so I'm just targeting the list items with that. I'm going to go ahead and give it a solid border. Alright. And I'm gonna go ahead and give them a width too, because they're really long, so maybe 100 pixels width for each of these. That looks pretty good. These to be centered in their boxes, so I'm gonna also go text, align, center. Perfect. And then also going to add a background color to these. So background color, and you can make this whatever you want. I'm gonna go ahead and make mine green real quick. I want some padding in between these items as well. So actually I want some margin in between these, I guess, so that they're all not running into each other. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a margin of about 20 pixels, and you can make this smaller if you want. Maybe we want to do 15 pixels, something like that. And then I just am giving it a padding of like 5 pixels to give it that edge. So remember, we can treat each of these as a block element, so each of them have that box model around them. So now they have a little bit more space in those areas. We can also, if we want to round these buttons, and you don't have to do this, but again, you can do border radius, and maybe do like 2 pixels on these, give them a slight rounded edge. Maybe we want a little more, so 5 pixels. Alright. I want everything to be centered, and I also want my nav menu itself to have a background color. So let's go to the nav menu itself, so dot menu, and background color, and again, this can be whatever you want. I'm just gonna do, I'll just do black, see what that looks like. Alright. We also need to do a width and a height on this menu div as well, so do height. Something like, let's see what 400 pixels looks like. Again, you'll just have to experiment with these values. Alright, and then maybe a width of, I don't know, let's try 300 pixels. That looks pretty good. Now we can't see our heading anymore, so let's actually change the color of our heading. So let's say H1 and color white, so I can actually read that. And we'll do text align center on that as well, to center it in that nav menu. Now, our buttons here aren't necessarily centered in that nav menu, so we'll have to mess with some margin for that. But first, I'm going to give my H1 a little bit more margin, so I think I might give it some extra top margin. So, margin top, let's push it down a little bit. Oh, that's pushing my menu. Let's try padding top instead. There we go. Maybe a little bit more. Push that down some more. And then my items over here, and this is probably, we could do with my unordered list. If I go margin left, 3 pixels, let's see if that pushes it over. Perfect. So let's just experiment with values until we get it exactly how we want it. I'm gonna do like 35. That looks pretty good. Alright, and then for these items, I don't want them to be purple, so I'm actually going to go down to my A, and I'm going to change the color of my text. I'm just going to make these white also. Alright, so that looks pretty good so far. Now let's see. So now we have all of those steps, and now we just want to go ahead and make the background color and the text color change on rollover or on hover. So I'm actually just going to go to, let's see where we have our background color. We have that on list item. So let's do list item on hover. We're going to change the background color to, I don't know, let's do light blue. And again, you can make these any colors you want. So now color is changing on hover. And then I want to change the color of my text on hover as well. So I'm going to go to my A, and I'm going to go A on hover, color, let's make that black instead. So now when I hover it, all of my buttons, my text is changing and my background color is changing. So your lab should look something like this. So work to experiment with padding and margin to make your things sort of centered and not cutting off at the top or the bottom or the sides, and give those rollover effects. And you don't have to do the border radius on the buttons, but pretty much all the other steps that I showed you, you should go ahead and do. Once you're done with that and your menu looks pretty decent, all you're going to do is just save this lab, close it out, and then right click on it and compress it, and then upload this zip folder.